Good morning, guys. My name is Matteo Nunner and I'm a writer and a high school teacher here in Vercelli. Once, however, not so far away from now, I was also a student of the Nagorno Karabakh, the Liceo Classico. For this reason, your teacher, Professor Ganji, my favorite one, now my colleague, asked me to produce a short explanatory video about Armenian people and the recent event in the Nagorno Karabakh region. Yes, in part I'm reading, but I swear that the text was produced by me. This because I have tried to remember to you very good teacher that my oral exposure skills are still the same as when I was a student. And they were not the best. But still, I'm honored by the request. I will try to do my best. Among the novels that I've published, there is one that talks about the genocide of the Armenian people. Armenia is a country located in Asia Minor, in the Caucasus, with a troubled history. In the 301, Armenia was the first state in the world to adopt Christianity as his state religion, official state religion. However, its church soon became independent. The Armenian Apostolic Church was established and separated from the other Christian churches after the Council of Chalcedon in 451. Unfortunately, we do not find the same independence in the political and military spheres. In ancient times, there were already many dominating people in the region: Romans, Arabs, Mongols, and Persians. Between the 9th and the 11th century, Armenia was once again an independent kingdom and experienced a cultural, political, and economic renaissance. A new capital, named Ari, was founded and is currently located in Turkey. With the construction of Ani, Armenia became a populous and prosperous nation that had political influence over its neighboring nations. In 1071, after the defeat of Byzantium by the Turks, Armenia was also conquered. Thousands of Christian families, led by the family of the last king of Ani, the ancient capital, left Armenia and settled in foreign lands. The situation gave the Kurds the opportunity to expand into Armenia's territory. Now, the history of Kurdish people and of the Armenian people is linked from this moment on a continuous confrontation for centuries to come. In 1354, 1 year after the conquest of Constantinople by Muhammad II, the Ottoman Empire and Persia divided the region. The Armenians of Constantinople became a respectable component of Ottoman society, while the other Armenians suffered the harassment of the various Pasha, the king of the Ottoman empires, and paid exorbitant taxes imposed by the Kurdish tribes, which were largely taken into account by the Ottoman authorities. At this point, another population comes into play, a population that will be decisive in unleashing the following Armenian genocide by the Ottoman Empire. I'm talking about the Russians. At the beginning of the 1800s, the territory corresponding to today's Armenia was temporarily annexed to the Russian Empire. Following to the Russian-Turkish War, the Ottoman Empire ceded part of the Armenian territory to the Russian Empire. On the one hand, Russia's ambitions to penetrate Armenian territory began, linked to the goal of finding an outlet to the Mediterranean Sea. And on the other hand, the process led to making Armenians increasingly pro-Russian and Ottomans suspicious about the Armenian people. In the period before the First World War, in the Ottoman Empire, the government of the Young Turks was established, which would later form the modern Turkey, was a nationalist movement. They feared that the Armenian people could ally themselves with the Russians, of whom they were enemies in the war. Many episodes of massacres and violence of Armenian civilians had already occurred in the decades before the Great War, under the Sultan from the second half of the 19th century. However, the actual genocide began in the period of the First World War. Already in the year 1909, there was an extermination of at least 30,000 people. The actual genocide was unleashed in 1915, the beginning of the actual genocide of Armenian people. At the outbreak of the First World War, many Armenians deserted, and the Armenian battalions of the Russian army began to recruit among their ranks in Ottoman territory. The city of Van, where I set my novel, were conquered by these troops who wanted to give it to the Russians. It was a city on the border of the territory between Russian Empire and Ottoman Empire. On the night between 23 and 24 of April of the 1915, the first arrests were made among the Armenian elite of Constantinople. In just 1 month, more than 1,000 Armenian intellectuals, including journalists, writers, poets, and even parliament delegates, were deported to the interior of Anatolia and massacred along the road, with violence or simply with hunger, thirst, and fatigue. The Marches of Death, as they are called, however, also involved a large part of the Armenian people. They involved more than 1 million people. Hundreds of thousands died. These marches was organized under the supervision of officers of the German army, according to the alliance between Germany and the Ottoman Empire, and can be considered as the dress rehearsal of the most famous death marches perpetrated by the Nazis in the Second World War. Hundreds of thousands more were massacred by Kurdish militia and Turkey army. For political and economic issues, still today the Armenian genocide is one of the least known and most denied genocide, especially obviously by Turkey authorities. The Armenian genocide caused about 1.5 million deaths. Turkish sources tend to minimize that number. A population used as a scapegoat in the face of the collapse of what was once the majestic Ottoman Empire, now reduced and mutilated. The Armenian lands then passed into the orbit of communist Russia and, like many other socialist nations, went through all the phases after the fall of the Berlin Wall, becoming an independent state. Armenia, however, returned to the news following the Nagorno Karabakh conflict. It is a very fragile region, disputed between Armenia and Azerbaijan for almost a century. There were already clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan between the 1918 and the 1920, until to the 1980, with the weakening of the communist Russia, the USSR. A pogrom was also unleashed against Armenians living in Sumgait, a small village, in the 1988. The city is 25 kilometers north of Baku. I think that Baku is the capital of the modern Azerbaijan. Armed bands of Azeris, Azerbaijan population, circulated through the city, and Armenians were beaten, raped, and killed along the streets and inside their homes. The violence decreased after 3 days and only after the arrival of the Soviet armed forces. In 1992, when I was born, the Nagorno Karabakh war officially began. thousands of Azerbaijani soldiers, with the help of armored vehicles, left their country to head for the Karabakh mountains. 1 year later, in the 1993, Nagorno Karabakh and Armenia are on their knees. The blockade of the borders by the Turkish authorities that were close to the Azeris, to the Azerbaijan, has heavy economic repercussions on the population of Armenia, and in particularly Karabakh region. In January, a new Azerbaijan invasion attempts are registered. In 1994, however, after years of battles and extermination on both fronts, the situation improves for the Armenians. The Azeris try to regain the territory that they had lost, but the accommodation of the forces in the field, with the Armenians now controlling all the key points of the territory, makes any Azerbaijani effort vain. A ceasefire is proposed. Since 2012, there has been a progressive increase in tension, not only between Nagorno-Karabakh region and Azerbaijan, but also between Azerbaijan and Armenia. In this year, in 2020, a year already unfortunate, the clashes are reignited for about a month. After this month, a new war in Nagorno-Karabakh, we have a military winner. This time it's Azerbaijan, and two political winners, Russia and Turkey, who were behind the conflict based on the personal interest. The actual war was unleashed by Azerbaijan to put an end to the frozen conflict, where the situation had been stalled for 30 years, following the first war won by Armenia. Anyway, today the balance of power has changed. Azerbaijan, with a new wealth and a population 3 times larger than Armenia, has modernized its army. The modern weapons in Azerbaijani possession are supplied by Turkey, but also by Israel. And they have made the difference. To avoid a total defeat, the Armenian government accepted a humiliating plan proposed by Russia. On the other hand, they had no choice. But as mentioned before, things are never as simple and linear as they appear on the surface, especially in the wars. That is why behind the Turks we have the Turkish dictator Erdogan, who emerged victorious from this test of strength. Behind the Armenians, on the other side, we have the Russian Tsar Vladimir Putin, who initially remained passive, surprising many because he let the war take its course, limiting himself to declaring the territory of Armenia proper and untouchable. Armenia, having long hoped for Moscow to come in rescue, now finds itself more dependent than ever on Russia. And this is a situation that nowadays we have in that particular unlucky region of the world, with that particular people called Armenian. Thank you very much for listening to me. A heartfelt greeting to everyone, and I hope to return soon to visit your teachers, and the ambient of the Liceo Classico of my past. Bye bye.